The arising of a single lustful thought causes the merit and virtue to be consumed and destroyed. This warning spoken by the sixth patriarch Huineng of Chan Buddhism to a disciple tormented by lustful thoughts has echoed in the hearts of practitioners for centuries. Desires are like fierce flames. They appear calm and harmless, but can unknowingly reduce years of diligently accumulated merit to ashes. Especially the formless and traceless mental fabrications within the mind are hidden reefs on the path of practice that are difficult to detect, yet exceedingly dangerous. In the Sarangama Sutra, the Buddha earnestly admonished Ananda and all sentient beings that even if the body does not chant, as long as the mind and consciousness continue to chant without interruption, it is like steaming sand or cooking rice with sand. It will never become cooked. This metaphor vividly and clearly illustrates the serious harm that lustful thoughts cause to spiritual practice. The eminent monk Huiyuan of the Eastern Jin dynasty once taught that when the mind is still, the land is still. When the mind murmurs, sentient beings murmur. All external phenomena are created by the mind. If the mind is unsettled, all dharmas are likewise unsettled. However, many practitioners often focus solely on physical observance of precepts, neglecting the purity of their mind and thoughts. The sensual desires of the body can be sought out and are easy to be wary of, but the lustful thoughts in the mind are like invisible poisonous snakes, silently eroding the foundation of practice. Why is lustful thought ultimately more terrifying than physical indulgence in sensual pleasures? How do these two create different obstacles to spiritual practice? When confronted with desire that follows like a shadow, what methods should practitioners employ to counteract and fundamentally eradicate it? Let's explore the answers to these questions through an ancient Buddhist story. Outside the city of Huangshi, in the Bamboo Grove Hermitage, a group of young monks were attentively listening to the venerable Ananda's teachings. One day, Ananda led the assembly to the garden within the city. In the springtime, the city of Huangshi was bustling and lively, with crowds gathered along both sides of the streets and pedestrians weaving through like threads. Among the group was a young bhikkhu named Shanming, who had a handsome appearance and a serene demeanor. She had recently entered the Buddhist monastic life, and, although she had been ordained and shaved her head, she had not yet completely severed worldly attachments and sensual desires. As the procession passed through a garden, a young maiden dressed in a turquoise gauze, with exquisite beauty, was picking spring flowers. Zenming's gaze was irresistibly drawn, his steps unconsciously slowing, his eyes following the figure of the young girl, unable to extricate himself for a moment. His unusual behavior was quickly noticed by Venerable Ananda at the end of the group. Ananda did not immediately speak up to remind. He simply watched everything silently. After the group had walked a certain distance away, he saw that the good layman was still absent-minded, occasionally turning his head to look back towards the garden, his eyes filled with fascination and confusion. After returning from alms round, the monks each returned to their meditation quarters for quiet practice. As night falls and all is silent, only Shanming tosses and turns, unable to sleep, the image of that young girl ever present in his heart. He closed his eyes, attempting to enter meditation, but found that the afflictions in his mind grew ever fiercer. Various impure thoughts surged like a tidal wave, preventing him from attaining tranquility. The next morning, Shanming, with a haggard face, came to Ananda's meditation chamber respectfully and bowed his head to inquire. Ananda invited him into the room and gently asked, "Shanming, what troubles your mind that you are restless all night?" Shanming, filled with shame and unable to hold his head high, spoke almost inaudibly. "Venerable, I have been blessed with grace. Yesterday, in the city, I saw a woman of extraordinary beauty, and since that time, my mind has been filled with various disrespectful thoughts that I cannot calm. The disciple fears having violated the precepts, and thus is unworthy to be a follower of the Buddha." Ananda showed no trace of reproach, but calmly asked, have any women close to you exhibited inappropriate words or behavior?" The mountain dweller hurriedly shook his head, while the disciple only looked on from a distance, not approaching even half a step, nor committing any words or actions that could cause offense. Ananda lightly waved his hand. "In that case, you have only generated the thought, but have not put it into action." He pondered for a moment, a gleam of wisdom shining in his eyes, then continued, "However, Shanming, do you know which, between the subtle presence in the heart and the actual form and shadow, is more detrimental to cultivation?" Shanming fell into thought, and after a moment replied, "I am dull-witted. I believe the actual form and shadow to be more serious. After all, that is a truly committed wrongdoing, harming others as well as oneself, violating the Buddhist teachings and the monastic code. Though lustful thoughts in the mind are improper, since no one knows of them, and they cause no substantial harm, they should be regarded as less severe than physical actions." Ananda gave a slight smile, stood up, and walked over to the wooden rack nearby, picking up a pair of socks. One is empty without anything, the other is filled with clear water. He placed 2 bowls in front of Shanming and asked, "Which of these 2 bowls is easier to fill with water?" Shanming did not understand the meaning, but answered truthfully, "The empty bowl is easier to fill. The full bowl cannot hold any more." "Precisely so," Ananda earnestly said. "The mind is like a vessel. A mind filled with lustful thoughts cannot contain wisdom and purity." In the Shurangama Sutra, the Buddha admonishes us that if the latent mind is not eliminated, the defilements cannot be removed. Though defilements may appear harmless, they are like seeds planted in the field of the mind. Over time, they take root and sprout, eventually growing into towering trees that obscure the sunlight of wisdom. Ananda continued, saying, "In the past, there were 2 practitioners residing together in the mountains. One had a pure heart, but, during a momentary lapse while going out, unknowingly violated the precept against sexual misconduct. The other outwardly appeared to uphold the precept strictly, yet day and night harbored lustful fantasies in his mind. Later, the Buddha said that the former, after committing a precept violation, deeply felt remorse and diligently practiced, eventually attaining the fruits of sainthood. The latter appeared pure outwardly, but was internally defiled, making it difficult to accomplish the path of awakening. Why then does the wise one question out of misunderstanding?" Ananda explained that the former, after transgressing precepts, recognizes the mistake and reforms, purifying the mind. The latter appears to uphold the precepts outwardly, but internally becomes increasingly defiled over time, like an underground current hidden from view, yet capable of destroying the foundation. The Mahaprajnaparamita states, "The mind is the root of the body. When a mind is calm, actions are pure. All faults and afflictions arise solely from the mind. Even when afflicted by evil karma, one can still be aware and repent. Yet when the mind is defiled, one often remains unconscious of it and takes it lightly. Over time, the capacity for wholesome mindfulness is lost, only to be regained with the coming of a new day." Shanming seemed to be contemplating, and the Venerable, she said, "Although engaging in sexual misconduct is a grave fault, occasional lapses do occur. Recognizing one's mistakes and correcting them still allows for healing and redemption. When lustful thoughts arise continuously in the mind, accumulating day by day, even without manifest actions, their harmful influence grows ever deeper. Indeed, Ananda, when a layman sees all things thus, yet his mind is often filled with lustful thoughts, no wholesome qualities arise. It is like fertile soil overrun by weeds, leaving no place for the path to take root and grow. Secondly, when the body is ensnared by the realm of lust, there still exists a voice of shame and remorse, like a clear mirror reflecting stains that can be promptly wiped clean. In contrast, sexual fantasies often occur covertly, like groping in a dark room, unseen and unnoticed, making them difficult to counteract. Thirdly, The habitual indulgence in fantasies, like water droplets wearing through a rock, will inevitably lead to actions over time, just as a seed germinates and inevitably grows into a tree. The virtuous young man, with a solemn countenance, joined his hands in reverence and respectfully said, "Disciple is already aware of his faults. However, one does not know how to counteract the desires that arise in the mind. I humbly beseech the Venerable One's compassionate guidance." Ananda looked at this sincere seeker of the Dharma and kindly said, "Well done. Recognizing one's mistakes and correcting them is the greatest virtue. Desires are like wild horses, difficult to tame, yet not beyond remedy." Ananda took a scroll of scripture from the bookshelf, flipped to a certain page, and showed it to the virtuous layperson. This is the practice of the contemplation of impurity as taught by the Buddha in the Sammadhiraja Sutra, specifically addressing the complete cessation of distracted thoughts. Please observe carefully. The virtuous layperson took the sutra, which detailed the various impure characteristics of the human body: hair growing in shame, thick blood mixed with urine, sinews and bones connected to the brain, and the process of the body's decay and transformation after death. Alongside the sutras, there are simple illustrations depicting human anatomy and various stages of corpse decomposition. After careful reading, he furrowed his brow and said, "Venerable, this method of visualization appears simple, but in truth, it is difficult to practice. Visualizing beautiful forms as white bones is challenging for beginners like me. Whenever I close my eyes to meditate, that beautiful countenance always appears in my mind, replacing any image of disrespect." Ananda nodded and said, "Indeed, it is not easy, but the practice itself is like rowing against the current. Without reverence, one only moves backward. The practice of reverence is the fundamental method to counteract lustful thoughts. Although it is difficult to enter, its effect is the most immediate. I will share with you a convenient Dharma door, which may be more suitable for your current capacity." Ananda's eyes were like water. Suddenly, he took out a string of deep brown Bodhi seed mala beads from his embroidery pouch and slowly displayed them to the devotees. Each bead on the mala emits a gentle luster, as if it has been touched and blessed over many years. This is the secret method of desire cessation personally transmitted by the Blessed One, called the mind motion contemplation technique. Ananda's nature is humble yet dignified. Those who practice this method can, like a bright mirror, clearly perceive the inner demons of the mind, causing desires and cravings to naturally dissolve. This Dharma is divided into 7 steps. Ananda's voice abruptly ceased. He gently closed his prayer beads and turned his gaze toward the distant mountains outside the window, lost in contemplation. Shanming urgently asked, "World-honored one, why do you not continue? What exactly is this 7-step mental method?" Ananda smiled mysteriously and said, "The method is contained within the vital energy. There are still doubts in your heart that remain unresolved. One must understand an eternal and unchanging truth before one can eliminate the hidden afflictions of the mind." Shanming does not understand. What is the true principle? Ananda gently caressed the prayer beads, his eyes softly closed. When you truly understand why mental indulgence harms the foundation of practice more than physical indulgence, this truth will naturally reveal itself. At that moment, the clouds parted outside the window, and the sunrise cast a ray of golden light through the curtain, falling precisely upon Ananda. Shanming seemed to see behind Ananda countless manifestations, each one imparting the mysterious heart Dharma. A sudden jolt arose in his heart, as if he had attained some realization. Venerable Shanming experienced sudden enlightenment. "I seem to understand something. Although the body and mind may violate precepts, their consequences are temporary, and recognizing mistakes allows for correction. However, sensual desire is like poison that gradually penetrates, accumulating day by day, unknowingly feeding the heart. What is even more terrifying is that the mind's lust is known to no one and bound by no external restraint. Practitioners often remain unaware and indifferent to it. Over time, their moral perception gradually grows numb, and even the feeling of shame ceases to arise. Could this be what the Venerable referred to as the truth? Ananda nodded with relief, saying, well said, you have grasped the profound meaning within. The Great Perfection Sutra states, the concealed mind refers to those born of attachment, characterized by greed, hatred, and ignorance, along with various forms of desire and numerous kinds of subtle qualities that arise from conceptual thinking. This is called the concealed mind. The obscuration of the mind appears formless, yet it gradually erodes the foundation of practice, diminishes the spirit of diligence, and ultimately leads to difficulty in accomplishing wholesome karma. Ananda further said, that mantra is none other than the method of contemplating one's own mind. Whenever lustful thoughts arise, there is no need to forcibly suppress them. Let them flow naturally step by step. Simply remain anchored in right mindfulness, observing the process of the lustful thoughts arising, abiding, transforming, and ceasing, like an impartial observer who does not generate anger. Ananda further explained that in the Ragama Sutra, the Buddha once said that if one can transform and awaken, one is the same as the Tathagata. Lustful thoughts themselves are not sinful. The sin lies in being controlled by those lustful thoughts. Practitioners should understand that thoughts are like clouds, arising from nowhere and vanishing without destination. By neither clinging nor resisting, one can naturally attain transformative realization without being swayed by external things. Shanming suddenly attained great enlightenment, realizing so that is how it is. It is not about forcibly extinguishing lustful thoughts, but rather transforming one's attitude towards them. Like reeds in a storm, they do not resist the wind and rain, but sway with the breeze, yet remain deeply rooted in the earth, unuprooted. Indeed, Ananda further said, the Buddha teaches us in the Mahaparinirvana Sutra that all sentient beings possess Buddha nature. Even at the moment of arising thoughts and intentions, the pure and aware nature that observes these thoughts has never been defiled. Understanding this principle, desires become like passing clouds, not to be feared. Shanming further inquired, is it because mental lust gradually erodes the pure and awakened nature that the Venerable One stated earlier that mental lust is more harmful to the foundation of cultivation than bodily lust? Ananda nodded and said, well said, you have grasped the profound meaning within. Carnal indulgence is a momentary fault. After committing it, if one can generate a sense of remorse and resolve to reform, it can actually advance one's spiritual practice. However, mental indulgence accumulates day by day, gradually blurring the boundaries between good and evil, eroding the heart of diligence, and ultimately causing even the sense of remorse to disappear. The Dharma instrument is precise and true. The mind is the root of the Dharma. The mind follows the affairs of the mind. With sincere devotion, one sincerely recites the Buddha's name, speaks promptly, acts promptly, and thus pursues the suffering caused by sin. Like a wheel chasing its broken spoke, this is not yet the true practice. Shanming instantly became enlightened. I understood that while physical lust violates precepts, recognizing one's mistakes and correcting them is possible. Although mental lust appears intangible, it gradually numbs our moral awareness and undermines the foundation of consciousness cultivation. As stated in the Ijiao Sutra, one should be aware of the 5 roots and not allow them to become lax, just as a herdsman wields a staff to drive the cattle, preventing them from wandering and damaging the crops. Witnessing goodness, Ming had already attained some realization, while Ananda nodded repeatedly at one point. Taking the string of Bodhi beads from the embroidery, he handed them to Shanming. These beads were personally consecrated by the Shakyamuni Buddha himself, with each bead inscribed with a single syllable of the heart mantra. When desires arise, hold and pass this bead while continuously turning the light inward to observe the mind. By doing so, one will certainly be able to subdue the demons. With reverence, Shanming respectfully accepted the prayer beads but hesitated and asked, "Venerable Sir, besides this method of mindfulness, are there other ways to counteract lustful thoughts?" Ananda Venerable taught that, in addition to the contemplation method just mentioned, there are several other methods to counteract lustful thoughts. First, the contemplation of impurity. In the Agama Sutras, the Buddha teaches the bhikkhus to contemplate the impure nature of the body, realizing that the physical form is merely a collection of skin, flesh, and blood, thereby reducing attachment to the body. Second, the practice of breath restraint meditation. The Anapanasati Sutta records that by concentrating on the inhalation and exhalation of the breath, the scattered mind can be unified in one place, reducing the opportunity for the arising of deluded thoughts. Thirdly, the mind is impermanent. The Sutra of Impermanence admonishes us that the days of the world have passed, and life gradually diminishes, like a fish boiled in water or a silkworm. What joy remains? Understanding the impermanence of life, one does not allow the mind to be swayed by desires. A virtuous man respectfully asked, "Among these methods, which one is the most effective?" Ananda's filial piety and power. The Dharma has no fixed form, adapting to the capacities of beings, yet sometimes the teaching is lost. For you, the practice of mindful contemplation may be most suitable, because you already possess a sense of remorse and a willingness to reform, but have not yet mastered the method. The practice of mindfulness does not resist desires, nor does it follow them blindly. It acts as a balanced guide, harmonizing with the foundation of your present state. Shanming further inquired, "Does the mala given by the Venerable One truly possess divine power?" Ananda, exemplifying filial piety, replied, "The mala is originally an aid for concentration and does not possess any supernatural power. What was just mentioned is the skillful means in its entirety, intended to guide you to the entry point. True strength lies within your own mind, not in external things." As stated in the Diamond Sutra, if one perceives the self through form or seeks the self through sound, that person walks on a false path and cannot see the Tathagata. Dharma resides in the mind, not in external forms or appearances. Shanming deeply bows with reverence. The disciple has received the teaching. Ananda said with comfort, "You have set foot on the right path." On the path of practice, fluctuations are inevitable. Importantly, regardless of favorable or adverse circumstances, always maintain awareness and do not become attached to stillness. As stated in the Diamond Sutra, the mind arises without abiding anywhere. One dwells in right mindfulness without attachment to thoughts. This is the essential key to practice. After several months, Shanming was able to remain firmly established in meditation, undisturbed by external circumstances. One day, he reported his practice progress to Ananda. "Venerable One, I have been able to maintain awareness when lustful thoughts arise, not following after them. However, sometimes such thoughts still emerge. I wonder when I will be able to completely eradicate them." Ananda spoke kindly. "Good, you have realized the true essence of practice. There is no need to eliminate desire itself, but to cease attachment to desire. Attachment to demons leads to liberation, continuously entering nirvana amidst afflictions. Afflictions themselves are bodhi. As long as one is not transformed by afflictions, afflictions themselves are the path to liberation." Shanming suddenly attained great enlightenment, and from then on diligently practiced cultivation, soon attaining proper ordination. Many years later, Shanming had become a venerable elder with great virtue and respect. One time, a young bhikkhu came to him seeking advice due to being troubled by lustful thoughts. Shanming did not respond immediately, but instead recounted his own past experiences and the teachings of Venerable Ananda. The young monk was deeply moved after hearing this. It is truly admirable that the elder was able to confront his own afflictions directly and courageously seek guidance from the venerable teacher. But we ordinary people have minds like wild horses, difficult to tame. How can one remain unmoved when faced with the temptation of sensual beauty? Shanming smiled gently and said, "The path of practice lies not in external appearances, but within the inner mind. When the mind is calm, the land is calm. All is created by the mind. Worldly beauty is not inherently wrong. The fault lies in the lustful thoughts of the mind. When one truly understands the nature of the mind and sees all phenomena as like dreams or illusions, one naturally remains unmoved." The young monk, deep in thought, was advised by the elder that one need not flee from worldly beauty, but rather transform one's own perspective towards it. Shanming nodded and said, "Exactly so. In the past, the Buddha, while at Velluvana in Rajagaha, also encountered many beautiful women, yet his mind was like a clear mirror, reflecting without being defiled. The purpose of practice is not to flee from the world, but to remain in the world without being defiled by it. The Heart Sutra states, form does not differ from emptiness. Emptiness does not differ from form. When you truly understand this principle, naturally your mind will become like still water, not stirred by reflections in the mirror." The young monk respectfully bowed and paid homage. The disciple understood that it is not about eliminating desire, but about not being swayed by desire. It is not about escaping the world, but about practicing within the world without being defiled by it. Shanming Sini assured, "You have obtained the Jiyuan and entered. Remember, although the physical form belongs to the realm of phenomena and may err momentarily, recognizing mistakes and correcting them is essential. The mind's reflection may seem intangible, yet it accumulates over time, embodying the true nature of the way." The practitioner at that time contemplated their own mind, not being swayed by external things, thereby truly attaining liberation. From then on, this young monk also diligently cultivated, and before long, he too attained realization. Shanming's teachings are like fire embers, passed down through generations, illuminating the path for countless practitioners. The path of spiritual cultivation is long and arduous, filled with temptations and challenges. As Venerable Ananda said, the true obstacle does not lie in external circumstances, but within one's own mind. The reason why mental sensual desire is more reprehensible than physical sensual desire is precisely because it is concealed and enduring, like an underground current eroding the foundation, unknowingly damaging the mind. Although there are various methods of counteraction, the core is only one, to realize that the essence of the mind is not subject to movement. How can we maintain the purity of the mind when faced with myriad phenomena? When desires arise, how can we avoid being swayed by them? These issues are not only related to the practice of ancient monks, but also represent important topics for modern individuals seeking inner peace. Perhaps the dialogue between Shanming and Ananda can offer us some inspiration, not to escape or suppress, but to be aware and transform, not to be enemies with oneself, but to understand the true nature of the mind. When we observe our own mind in this way, regardless of how external conditions change, the inner mind remains steadfast and unmoved, pure and unstained. This may well be the highest realm of practice and the eternal truth that Venerable Ananda sought to convey to his noble teacher.